Good morning.
Come on, baby.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
I love when a plan comes together. There we go. And we'll keep it going, folks, as I am having fun on the boards today. How you all doing today? Let me bring up our co-host, the legendary Jack Hirsch. Let's add him to the stream. And now let's bring up our great guest today, Dr. Paul Semendinger. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We're streaming on Mac Sports Facebook page and the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook page. We have our own YouTube channel that we're on right now. Also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, comment, and please subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great NESSP shows. Our website is nessp.info. Check it out. Shows, info, stores, and links, and guests like we have on today, the great Dr. Paul Semendinger. I'm Mac with your co-host Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. And as you can see, I'm still learning this board. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things I can do with it. But, man, to learn it and to get it right all the time is sometimes a great feat. And good morning out there to Carlos Chavez, who joins us right away. And, Carlos, it's great to have you. This, of course, is the Mac and Jack Sports Show. This is our feature show on Saturday, the Mac and Jack Debate Show, where we debate topics of baseball, football, hockey, all sports topics out there, folks. And today we're joined, as I said, by Dr. Paul Semendinger, who is our resident Major League Baseball analyst, expert, especially when it comes to the New York Yankees, where he runs a great blog over there called Start Spreading the News. He's the founder of that. And he's also, folks, an award-winning author with his book, Scattering the Ashes, that gets great reviews, great sales, and we enjoy having him on every week. Thank you for coming on, Dr. Paul. So, guys, we're going to get right away to the sports updates real quick. And there wasn't too much action in the local sports scene. We did have the Celtics playing the Los Angeles Clippers, Jack, and they beat them 119-115. So impressive.
Paul George was out for the Clippers, so that helped the Celtics a bit. And you kind of wonder with Kawhi Leonard. I know he's had the 2 MVPs, with the San Antonio Spurs and the Toronto Raptors, leading them to NBA titles. But you kind of wonder whether he can carry a team on his back the way a superstar really should. We assumed he could in the past, but now you kind of have to wonder because the Clippers aren't really getting it done during crunch time from last year coming into this year.
Right, and the thing about the Celtics is they have a good team, Jack. They're solid. I don't think they'll be in there at the end of the year for the division winners, but they have a good competitive team. And, some breaks go their ways during some of them playoffs. They might sneak in there. The Bruins escaped by the Flyers 2-1 The Flyers are kind of in a downfall. The Boston Bruins are in my opinion, right now taking control of the division. It's early.
I won't say a downfall, Mac. I mean, maybe they're not living up to expectations, but they're number one. The Bruins are in first place. The Flyers in second in the Eastern Division. And it was a great game. It was scoreless after 2 periods. Then the Flyers go ahead 1-0. And then within a half minute, the Bruins answer with 2 goals with 8 minutes left. And they hang on. It was like a classic game, a Titans really compelling game.
Well, we had Carter B on, and he talked about how the Flyers seem to, when they get the lead, it seems they become less aggressive like they did last year against the Islanders. And maybe he has a point, Jack. Maybe there's something built in over there. Once they get the lead, they kind of relax and don't play as well as they do in the beginning. And that was Carter B's opinion anyway when he was on the show.
Well, when you have a great goalie like Carter Hart, maybe the team gets a little complacent. I'm not saying that's the case, but it kind of reminds me of what Tim McCarver said when the Cardinals lost the 1968 World Series. They relied too much on Bob Gibson because they thought he was invincible. So maybe the rest of the team let up a little.
Great analogy. In some news now, of course, we know Trevor Bauer was not signed by the Mets. Instead, he was signed by the Dodgers. They say in the papers he was snubbed. He snubbed the Mets. I don't know if he snubbed the Mets. I think he just went out and got his best offer and went to play for maybe the best team in the National League, next to maybe now here I go here San Diego Padres, Jack. I mean they have a solid team over there now too. But Bauer gives the Dodgers for both of you. Bauer gives the Dodgers a big uplift over there.
Think of that. I want to talk about the Bauer contract, and I don't know whether Doc is as much into contracts as I am. He's certainly into the stats and knows a lot more about than I do about a lot of the game. But contracts are my thing that I really pay attention to. And the Dodgers signed Bauer to a 3-year deal, a total of $102 million. And if my math isn't wrong, that's $34 million a year. So worst case scenario for the Dodgers, if Bauer's a flop, they're in for $102 million. But what makes the Bauer contract interesting, he gets $40 million for the first year. Then he can opt out. So
wow.
If he has a great year, he is going to opt out, even though it's $45 million the second year and $17 million the third year. So and he's allowed to opt out at the end of the second year. And of course, at the end of the third year, that's the end of the contract. So if Bauer has a Cy Young caliber year, he's going to opt out of the contract at the end of this year rather than want to collect $62 million over 2 years. And the merry-go-round starts again. So expect, if Trevor Bauer is truly an MVP type caliber pitcher the next year, the next 2 years, expect him to be a free agent really the next 3 years. Basically, same thing's going to start over. And I would be shocked if he was in pinstripes or Met uniform next season.
Yeah, Jack, even our fourth host here, Carlos, agrees with you. He says the contract is crazy. So, Doc, what are your comments on that deal made by the Dodgers and the Mets not getting Bauer? Maybe that was the hang-up. Maybe they weren't willing to give him that opt-out clause after the first year.
If I were a team, now a lot of thoughts. Trevor Bauer has not had a stellar baseball career where he has year after year after year of great stats. He was outstanding last year. But again, that was a truncated season. It was only 60 games, and he played in a different division, right, against weaker opponents in many regards. He's a top-notch pitcher. He's a smart pitcher. He understands the game. He's a thinker out on the mound, and he's an innovator. There's a lot to like about Trevor Bauer, the baseball player. I don't know if Trevor Bauer is a $40 million a year pitcher, and
$45 million next year.
Yeah, right. I think the Dodgers paid big money. What I like that the Dodgers did, what I like that the Mets were they were in the game. What I liked that what they were both doing was they were going for it. As you know, the thing that's frustrated me with the Yankees is, that it seems as though that luxury tax cap is what hampers their ability to totally go all in. So what impresses me about the Dodgers and the Mets is they were willing to go above that cap if they felt that this player was the guy who was going to take them to the next level. What I like about what the Dodgers did and what the Mets were also doing or trying to do was trying to secure the great talent they believe in Trevor Bauer for a lot of money for fewer years. And I think that's really a model that again, a team like the Yankees could also employ. The problem with the big contracts isn't necessarily the total amount. It's really the years. And when you get to the back ends of these contracts and you're paying these guys 20 million, 25 million, 30 million when they're 38 years old and they're no good anymore. If I were a team, I would rather pay more upfront and have a shorter contract so you get those great years. I don't want to pay for the back end of a contract for a guy who's not worth that money. Maybe they feel Trevor Bauer, again, I think that's debatable, but maybe they feel Trevor Bauer is worth that kind of money. I don't think so. I like that they were big players, and I like that the deal is short. If I'm a major league team, I like the shortness of the deal so that I get out of it quickly.
But if Bauer is outstanding, he's going to apply for free agency next year. He has an opt-out. So the Dodgers essentially going to have him for 1 year. Now, if the Dodgers win the World Series next year, it's worth it, even if he opts out and goes elsewhere. But he's high maintenance. Let's say Bauer, who has a 3.90 lifetime ERA, has a really poor season. He's high maintenance as personality. He's a pain in the butt. Plus, if he's pitching bad on top of that, it's going to be a very uncomfortable situation. His Dodger teammates might not like him, and they're going to be stuck next season with giving the guy $45 million. It says $40 million is a major league record this year. The $45 million will totally shatter the major league record. To put it in perspective, Mike Trout, Garrett Cole, they're getting around $36 million. Bauer's getting 40 and 45 next year. And the Dodgers could be stuck with Trevor Bauer next year. It could backfire at $45 million a year, by far major league record. But I understand from the Dodgers' viewpoint, they had to answer what the San Diego Padres did. The Padres are a little behind them. The Padres get Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, a couple of aces, adding on to their staff. Now the Dodgers are thinking, wow, they caught up to us. For us to stay a step ahead of them, this is our answer to them.
I agree with that 100%, Jack. That was my thoughts too when they signed him. So we got Bauer going to the Dodgers. The Braves signed last year's home run leader in the National League and slugger for 4 years and $64 million.
Marcell Ozuna. Now, $16 million a year for 4 years. Not a bad contract for the Braves for Ozuna. The problem is Ozuna's a slouch in left field. Maybe Doc could give an opinion when he thinks the NL is going to have a DH, because if they don't have a DH, it's an uncomfortable contract for the Braves. They're going to have to play Ozuna in left field, and he's not a good left fielder. This is like a Giancarlo Stanton signing for less money. But at least the Yankees have the novelty of DHing Stanton. And Stanton's not a bad left fielder. People forget that. He's not a bad fielder. But Ozuna is not a good fielder. So, but if they have a DH, it works out for Atlanta. If the DH somehow doesn't come to the National League, then the Braves aren't going to be happy with the deal. Doc, what's your estimate about how long it's going to be before the DH officially is uniform in baseball?
I don't understand the way baseball operates oftentimes. There's a question as when there's going to be a DH in the National League and spring training starting this month. If everything starts on time, how do you go through a winter signing season and an off season where teams are preparing for a new season and they don't even know the rules? So, I would hope that the National League implements the DH sooner than later, and I would hope they do it this year. again, we've talked a little about this over the weeks and months that we've been together. You know, virtually every other baseball level uses a DH all the way through college and the minor leagues. Even the National League minor league teams employ a DH in their minor league teams, and the pitchers don't necessarily always hit. So why the National League is holding fast to pitchers hitting, especially with the injury opportunities that incurs on a guy who's now a $40 million player. Do you really want Trevor Bauer swinging a bat and running the bases? I don't. So I would think they're going to do it sooner or later. I think they're using the DH as a negotiations ploy rather than just saying, like, let's just do the right thing.
Yeah, so, I just read on that, Doc, where it's the Players Association, believe it or not, that's having a problem with the DH, and that's the holdup with the upcoming agreement that they're working on. And I don't understand why the Players Union would have a problem with that when they would get another player, in an official position to open up some more, money coming into the union and stuff. So I don't understand. I was reading it. I didn't understand it where they wanted to change some of the rules. Why it's the Players Association that's
I think that just as part of the negotiations. They threw that in. Again, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't get into the negotiations back and forth and understand that as well. I watch the game on the field, but from what I was reading, what's happening is rather than just talking about the DH, they're trying to throw that in with expanded playoffs and a lot of other things that the two sides are arguing or debating or negotiating, whatever word you want to use, about. So I don't think it's as simple as the players are against the DH. I think it's part of the bigger discussion with the negotiation. And my bigger point on that is I don't understand why they didn't figure this out in October.
Well, they're not going to do that, Doc. They're not going to figure anything out. It's going to be a standoff. You got the most powerful sports union in the country, maybe in the world, with Major League Baseball. It's so much stronger than any other sports union, and it causes a lot of problems and it causes a lot of hard feelings with fans. As last year they talked about, why are you arguing over millions when people are out of work, and that might happen again. I mean,
it might happen.
This COVID is not over yet, and you're signing all these big contracts and telling them what you want, and people out there in businesses are going out of business, and people are losing their jobs, and it puts the players union behind the eight ball right off the rip, and it makes us kind of not feel sorry for the owners, but maybe side with them when we normally wouldn't. So it's going to be a big, interesting debacle depending on what happens with the COVID.
Well, it's interesting. The players are always painted as being greedy, and the owners aren't. They get away with it, okay? And the owners are more the bottom line guys. I mean, ball players always painted greedy ball players. They're making millions because people perceive it as a fun game, because we all played it as kids for nothing. And a lot of adults, they have their Sunday softball league. They play for nothing. They go to the park. They play basketball. They love to do it for a living. So they don't understand when players negotiate. Now, the Players Union in Major League Baseball just voted down delaying this season a week. So, but it does strike the fan as being a little petty, a week here, a week there. I mean, what are you exactly arguing about? It sounds like a power game between ownership and the union.
Well, Jack,
I think
go ahead, Doc. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think what you guys are saying gets to the crux of the matter. I think the details are, way up here, and we're fans. We want to see a game. And we all believe that they should be doing everything they can to put the game on the field. For them, for the players, it's their livelihood. This is their little window of opportunity in their life where they can make money. And again, it's not necessarily the $40 million a year player. It's the guy's the 25th man on the roster. How many years is he going to be in the major leagues, and how much money can he maximize at that time? Because that's his skill. That's what he has lived his whole life, and he's developed in order to make it. And so, they don't have a long time of a lifetime of being able to earn money in their professional. They have a very short window, and so they're trying to maximize it. But we look at that from a distance and say, just get the game on. Like, I'll say it right now. I'm still pitching. I'll be 53 this summer, and if the Yankees need somebody to give them innings, they don't have to worry about my arm. I could throw 500 innings this year, and they can pay me at the major league minimum. I will be happy to play, and I will sign and opt out after 1 year, and we can negotiate again next year for 45.
Well, the problem is, and I don't necessarily agree with you, Jack. A lot of fans think the owners are billionaires and they just have cash in their vault, which is not true either. I mean, they got to that point to become a major league or sports team owner by their business and the way they do business, and they're not going to liquidate all their money from all their businesses to pay a guy. I mean, that's not how it works in business. But the difference today is that, I think that the fans sided with the players more in the past. I think Major League Baseball did a very made a bad decision and taking away the salary cap, and that got let out of that worm got let out. The genie's out of the bottle. You can't. I don't see any way you can put a salary cap in Major League Baseball right now, right? It's like they don't take back the taxes after they tax you, right? That's there forever. So I think Major League Baseball made a huge mistake after the strike. I think if they were smart, because of course they didn't make as much revenue last year as they had in the past because of COVID and fans not being in the stadium, especially the smaller market teams who depend on the gate more than the bigger market teams. So I think that if the owners stand firm and they say, hey, listen, we got no money because we didn't have the contracts. I mean, we didn't have the gate. We didn't have the exposure we had last year. So we're losing money and we can't pay you anymore. But then they go around and they pay these big salaries. So, I mean, now the fans are like, well, you're lying to us, right? But, I mean, it's so convoluted. I wish that they will not be so public with their negotiations. I wish they would just take care of business and let us know the result when you're done with it. And I think that would make a lot of people a lot happier. You know what I mean?
And that's what we want to see. Yep.
Mac, the other element, too, that comes up once in a while, when a team wants a new stadium, should the taxpayers pay or should the team pay?
Right.
The team threatens to leave.
Right.
So the city gets scared and they come up with the money. Hypothetically, if the Yankees were serious about leaving New York and had a deal elsewhere to move to another city, we would be nervous. We would be, Yankee fans would be nervous. Some of us would be willing to put our principles to the side, perhaps, and say, okay, give them the darn money. We're angry about it, but the Yankees just can't leave. Look what happened with the Brooklyn Dodgers. I mean, you better believe the people in Brooklyn felt just give them whatever they want. We have to have them here. They're like a part of us.
Yes, and Carlos brings up a heck of a point. The minor leagues are in shambles, and they canceled the whole season last year, and who knows what's going to happen this year. I mean, they got different things in place right now where some leagues are kicked out, some leagues are taken. Major League Baseball isn't. In fact, Doc, we had Armand Rosamilia on, and he spent a whole season with the Jumbo Shrimp. And I
just interviewed him on the blog. He's got his own podcast with the Baseball Writers Association.
Yeah,
Great guy.
We talked to him last week. I mean, this week, as a matter of fact, Jack, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Thursday. He brought up he spent the whole season with the Jumbo Shrimp. He's a huge minor league fan, and as he said, and as Carlos just mentioned, man, the minor leagues are in shambles right now. So, guys, let's get into our little bit of our Yankee poll. As you know, every week, the producer of the show, Linda, puts in a question. Yes, they are. They're the New York Yankees, folks. And as I said, our producer, Linda, puts a poll question in three basic Yankee groups to see where the fans are at. And it checks out, what they feel about certain issues. And me and Jack were talking about the worst contracts the Yankees had done. So I went up and did a little research. and checked which were the highest, people's opinion, the highest probably mess ups in the Yankee contracts in the history. And I came back with three of the worst contracts was noted at this site. And first, we're going to start with, of course, Ellsbury, who had a 7-year, $153 million contract. He batted .264 for his career with the Yankees. And of course, he was injured a lot at the end. And when he went to leave, they ended up, coming to an agreement. But if they did not, he left with a $47 million, a debt to the Yankees. So, I mean, the Yankees would have had to pay that. And of course, they renegotiated that. So that was number one, Ellsbury. Second was Carl Pavano. 4 years, $34.5 million. He was 9-8 as a Yankee. His ERA was at 5, and he pitched less than a full season in those 4 years. The third was K. Igawa.
K. Igawa.
Thank you, Igawa. 5 years, $20 million, a $26 million posting fee they had to pay. His record was 2-4. He had an ERA of 6.66. He spent only 2 years with the Yankees. He ended up 2 years in the minors. The Yankees tried to give him back to Japan. Igawa refused, so they ended up having to keep him. So those were the three choices, guys. In your opinion,
one more. There was one. Oh, man.
That was the top three, Jack. We're not going to get into all the contracts. That was the poll question. So, in your opinion, out of those three guys, what would have been the worst contract in your opinion?
Well, at the time they signed Ellsbury, it wasn't, they overpaid. You knew it at the time. But the Red Sox also tried to retain Ellsbury, who was a free agent. My thought was Ellsbury's here 7 years. He's going to make the All-Star team about 3 times. That's how good he was. But when you look at the total dollars, the Ellsbury one's the worst one. $153 million total compared to Pavano's, which was a shade under 40. And the Japanese pitcher Gawa, that's a hit and miss. Someone, it's an unknown. You take someone from overseas. So the Ellsbury one's a bad one. It was haunting him for a while, and Ellsbury tried to hang in there. He was a broken down player. I think he just recently officially retired. It wasn't last year. I think it's official now. But there was always a little hope Ellsbury would come back and maybe give him a little something as a part-time player. So to me, that out of the three, that was the worst because of the total dollars, obviously.
How about you, Jack?
I'll agree with Jack. The thing about the Ellsbury deal, which always sat bad with Yankee fans, was that came on the heels of Robbie Cano leaving to go with the Seattle Mariners. And so the Yankees couldn't retain their all-star second baseman. The Mariners obviously blew the Yankees offer out of the water. And then it just seemed like the Yankees signed Ellsbury to make up for that. And the question about Ellsbury, and I agree with Jack, he should have been an all-star a number of years, and he had pretty good numbers. He had one great year with the Red Sox and a bunch of very good years or pretty good years. But the thing about Ellsbury that made less sense was he really just looked like Brett Gardner. They're very similar players, lefty hitters, on-base guys, speedy, center field type of guys without super strong arms who occasionally hit some home runs. And the Yankees already had that type of player. And so it was strange that they went the direction to get like Brett Gardner too, rather than go get a different guy. And then what happened with Ellsbury, of course, is he got hurt and he couldn't stay on the field. And that contract became an albatross. The thing with Kei Igawa, that also was a rebound signing. I believe that was after the Red Sox had maybe signed Daisuke Matsuzaka. And the Yankees then said, oh, now we have got to get another Japanese pitcher. And Igawa had some pretty good numbers in Japan. It just didn't translate. And he ended up spending, I believe, 5 years. I was just trying to look online with the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders or Yankees, what they were called back then, or whatever they were called back then. And I believe he has the record for the Scranton Wilkes-Barre franchise for the most games pitched and all sorts of things. I feel bad for him because he came here with high hopes and it didn't work out. So,
well, I understand what you're both saying about Ellsbury. The only thing I'm going to say about Ellsbury is that at least he played for most of the contract. To me, Pavano was easily the worst. I mean, this guy, he alienated all the players there. He didn't come to work and tried to work hard. He never panned out to be what we thought was going to be another ace. I mean, if you figure he signed a 4-year contract and played less than a year, that's $34 million a year, guys. So to me, I mean, Igawa it's just was a dumb thing to do. That was just dumb, and we didn't get anything for him really. But the Pavano deal, Jack, what I'm talking about is expectations, and I agree with you guys both. If you're going to count the long term of the deal, I mean, yeah, you would say Ellsbury. But man, for a 4-year contract for a guy who was supposed to come and booster our staff and only pitched less than 1 year and made $34.5 million, I think is probably the worst that I've ever seen.
There was some thought that Pavano was faking it, and even Mike Mussina, when he had to sign a new deal, said it has to be more than what Pavano gets. And Brian Cashman thought Pavano was genuinely hurt. But my theory is this. He was with the Yankees for 4 years. So you mean to tell me he was hurt and couldn't pitch for 4 years, but as soon as he leaves the Yankees and goes to the Minnesota Twins, he can pitch effectively?
Yeah.
I just don't see it. And Doc, I wouldn't blame Ellsbury on the Yankees losing Cano. I think it has nothing to do with it. They offered Cano, the Yankees, $25 million a year for 7 years. They didn't want to go to a crazy 10-year contract.
Which I agree with.
And the Mariners signed Cano for $1 million per year less, $240 million for 10 years, $24 million a year, as opposed to the Yankees, $25 million a year for 7. And Cano took the total dollars at the end for all the good that's going to do him, losing, this year's pay. I kind of wonder, guys, let's say the Mets, let's say hypothetically, decided they don't want to pay Cano for the next 2 years. After this year, he has 2 years left on his contract that the Mets have to pay. They don't want to pay him all that money. Could they take him to court and win because of the steroid use and him having to sit out a year? He's lost a lot of effectiveness coming off a year's layoff. Don't tell me that doesn't affect an older player who's going to be about 39 years old at the time. That's an interesting thing that no one talks about.
I think it's a good question. What do you think?
No, that. I think it's a great question, and I think, that could be something we talked about the Hall of Fame a couple of times and steroids and the blight that it's put on the game. What Jack brings up, and again, I've never heard anybody say that before. I think it's actually brilliant, and that could be the thing that really makes steroids the thing that people don't want to do, because not only might you get suspended, but your team might be able to sue you and get out of the contract, this big contract you signed. So it would be a huge disincentive for doing that and for cheating like that. I have no idea legally how that would play out, but I like the idea as a team could recoup their losses. Say, look, you presented yourself as a clean player. You're not a clean player. The contract was based upon you cheating or using illegal substances. So we're going to try to get out of it. That would be interesting.
It would definitely maybe wake up some players for sure. I mean, who knows? I mean, that's a great question, Jack. So that's it for the worst contract. The Yankee poll. Of course, they went with Ellsbury just because of the length of the contract, followed by Pavano and then Igawa. So you guys are right on the money about what the poll would say. So, guys. We have our Yankee trivia question for Saturday morning, as we do every Saturday. I went away from the book with the hard questions because you guys weren't getting it right. So I came up with this from a Yankee trivia site, guys. And I'm going to go to Jack first on this one so he doesn't get help from Doctor this time. And you should know this, Jack. What was the team, what team did the Yankees play in their first World Series?
Oh man, you're thinking not the 1920s. Boy. I should know it's simple. And this reminds me of the Honeymooners. Remember that episode with Swanee River playing on that?
Norton.
They don't bother me with this nonsense. I'm going to say the Chicago Cubs. I think I won't say the next one, but because I'm only given one answer, but I think I'd have the next one. But whatever, I missed it.
We lost. We lost.
Go ahead, Doc.
Max. I can't hear him. But anyway, the answer is the New York Giants.
Yes, it is. 1920.
They actually played.
Right?
They played the Giants their first 3 World Series 3 years in a row: 21, 22, and 23. And the Giants won in 21. The Giants won in 22, and then the Yankees finally won their first World Series in 23.
I'm thinking of when. Good work, Doc. I'm thinking of when I think it was the Cubs that were bench jockeying Babe Ruth.
That was 1932. Yep.
Yeah, but I was out of the element. I was a decade removed. Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking the Cubs.
That's all right, Jack.
Listen.
I never heard of them doing doing that to Ruth. So that's some more interesting.
No. But I was a decade removed. For some reason, I was getting the Cubs with the bench jockeying, but I didn't know the answer straight out. The Yankee first World Series.
There you go.
I could talk to you from 1949 and tell you every World Series winner from there to the present time. But before that, it's hit and miss.
So guys, let's get to our first debate topic. I was thinking about, as far as, you look at Kyler Murray, he could have played baseball or football. Jack mentioned John Elway might have been a heck of a pitcher for the Yankees.
No, right fielder.
Or right fielder. Sorry, I thought he pitched, but okay.
But with his arm, yeah,
he probably could have.
Probably could have.
Definitely. So we're gonna go with the best two-way sport player, and we're keeping it with the MLB and the NFL. We know that other players have played 2 sports. I don't know about professionally or not, but we're keeping it to those 2 sports, Jack. And you go first, as you always do in the debate.
In the 1980s and early 1990s, Bo Jackson was he was a phenomenon, if that's the correct word to use. You'd see these commercials with Nike, Bo knows.
Yeah.
Bo knows. Bo was the coolest guy out there. He was cooler than Michael Jordan. People don't realize that. Bo Jackson was the coolest athlete of all. Now, we're talking about a two-way player. Baseball and football. Now, football, he only played 4 years for the Raiders, but he was a Heisman Trophy winner in college. Heisman Trophy winner in 1990 for Auburn. And he had 4 years with the Raiders, and he was so good. He would play baseball all week and just show up for the game. And Howie Long said it was like a hobby to him, and he dominated. He couldn't be stopped playing for the Raiders. He played 9 years in the major leagues. Now he went to the Pro Bowl, in football. And in 1989, he was an all-star in baseball. He knocked in over 100 runs. Bo Jackson had an arm unlike any other. There was one play. He had the ball against the wall in the outfield and left field. The runner, Harold Reynolds, I think it is, he's rounding third. Bo Jackson throws a line drive. He doesn't hit the cutoff man. It doesn't go on a bounce. A line drive throw to the catcher, and they nail Harold Reynolds at the plate. Maybe the greatest throw in baseball history. He juggled his careers because he was so good. He wanted to play both sports. You can't blame him. Bo Jackson hit a one-handed home run against the Baltimore Orioles. Whoever hears of that, he takes his hand off the bat and he swings the bat with one hand and hits a home run. That goes against the laws of gravity. When he played in the All-Star game in 1989 in baseball, he was the MVP of that game. He had 4 seasons of over 20 homers, which if you prorated at the time, was pretty good. Never accused of being on steroids, anything like that. Just a phenomenal athlete, and the 9 years he played in the big leagues baseball, would have been a lot more if it wasn't for the hip injury. If it wasn't for the hip injury, he would have continued on and on with baseball and football. So he was the greatest two-sport baseball and football athlete of all time.
Well, it looks like we lost Doc, so I'll get right into mine, Jack. I'm gonna say Jim Thorpe. Now, Jim Thorpe, of course, we know was a great Olympian, and he had gold medals in the decathlon and the pentathlon. He played professional football, baseball, and basketball. Thorpe played 6 seasons with the New York Giants baseball team, signed with the Canton Bulldogs, an AFL team, going to 3 national championships, and he played for 6 other NFL teams, and even barnstormed in pro basketball. As a ball player, he was 6'1", 202 pounds, a mixture of speed and strength. In baseball from 1913 to 1919 with New York, the Reds, and Boston, his career batting average was .252. He played the outfield. Nicknamed the legend, the greatest athlete of all time, he played tailback, fullback, and end, and ran for TDs as a running back. He was a kicker. He played defense and became the first president of the National Football League. Did Jim Thorpe lead the MLB in home runs? No. His batting average or RBIs among the leaders? Not. He did lead the NFL all-time in rushing stats in a few years. He did bat over 366 one year when he played in baseball at the end of his career. Both very different games back then, Jack. If you think about it, compared to today, the football wasn't even shaped like it is today. It was like an oblong ball shaped more like a rugby ball, where you had to throw the ball curling up your arms instead of holding it. You couldn't handle it like you handle football today. There was no points. It was round. You had to hold it tighter. Catching the ball was a lot more difficult. He played in a different era. The baseball was made out of horsehide instead of cowhide. It was a lot looser, harder to hit, and harder to drive in runs. But most of his hits, Jack, well, I should say not most of them, but a good majority of them were doubles and triples because of what an athlete he was. He had his Olympic medals taken away from him because he did play baseball, being supposed to be an amateur sport because he needed the money then. And of course, the bats back then, Jack, were heavier. They were not the lightweight type bats they are today. But as far as an athlete, there was none better. And talk about discrimination, Jack. Well, pretty much we know what happened to the American Indians, how they've been looked at and treated over the years. An unbelievable athlete, Jack, maybe not as great as Bo Jackson for that time. But if you look at somebody who was just an incredible all-around athlete, played Major League Baseball like you're supposed to play it, played football like you're supposed to play it, just a great athlete, and also very fundamentally helped the NFL become the NFL, being the first president. So Bo Jackson, incredible for his time, no doubt about it. But I would have to go with Jim Thorpe as my pick.
You're cheating, Mac. The question is two-way athlete, baseball and football.
Right.
I couldn't care what kind of athlete he was. His gold medals are relevant. They had nothing to do with baseball or football. I'm sympathetic to the plight of the Indians. They were given a raw deal in society, a raw deal. But that has nothing to do with the two-way athlete, baseball and football. Okay, that's what we're talking about.
Okay, Jack.
Jim Thorpe.
Okay, Jack. Okay, Jack. Had Bo Jackson ever hit over 366 in any season he played?
Over what?
366 in any season he played.
Let me tell you something.
How many championships did Bo Jackson go to?
Bo, it's a baseball.
I'm talking about baseball. Did Bo Jackson ever bat 366, Jack?
Bo Jackson hit 4 homers in 4 consecutive at-bats And Jim Thorpe hit 7 in 6 seasons.
I understand that. Did he ever bat? Did he ever bat over 360?
And
Did he ever?
7 homers in 6? I don't care if it's a dead ball era.
Did he ever bat? Did he ever bat over 366, Jack?
Over 360.
Yeah, did Bo Jackson ever?
252 lifetime batting
He
average.
bat 1 year, Jack, 366. If you look at his later stats, he batted way over 300. And did Bo Jackson go to any NFL championship, Jack? Jim Thorpe went to 3.
No, it's a team game.
Jim Thorpe went to 3, Jack. 3 championships. Bo Jackson didn't go to a championship. I'm not disagreeing with you that Bo Jackson is a tremendous athlete, tremendous two-way baseball and football player. I'm just saying to say that Jim Thorpe is not even in his class is totally
1989, Bo Jackson knocked in over 100 runs.
right.
Okay, in one season. Over Jim Thorpe's whole career, he knocked in 82 runs.
I understand that. I understand that. But did he bat over 366? That's a simple question.
And
Jack.
Jim Thorpe didn't juggle both careers at the same time. He
Oh,
rolled
yes, he
from
did.
one to the other.
Oh, yes, he
Jackson
did.
was juggling, doing both at the
Oh,
same
yes, he
time.
did. Oh, yes, he did. He was playing with the Canton Bulldogs while he was playing with baseball. What are you talking about? Of course he did. And he went to 3 championships, Jack. Bo Jackson, 0.
All right,
During
so
that time, you would have had a ring on your finger had you played. I mean, it wasn't as difficult as today. You didn't have all
Let
the
the doc get it. Let the doc get in here and tell the truth. Go ahead, Doc.
So my notes are at a different computer. I lost internet there, so I had to run to a alternative studio. So I'm just trying to get used to it here. So I don't have any statistics in front of me, but when it comes to the cool factor, I agree with Mac that the great athlete of the early half of the 20th century, everybody always said the greatest athlete's Jim Thorpe. I don't think you can deny that. When it comes to the cool factor, the coolest guy was definitely Bo Jackson. He was the best. I started teaching when Bo Jackson was playing, and I was a history teacher and a geography teacher. I had a big poster in my classroom, and it said, Bo knows geography. So, I mean, I love Bo Jackson.
There you go, Mac.
But of the players, the greatest two-way player, I think is undeniable that it was Deion Sanders. He had a longer football career that gets him into the NFL Hall of Fame. And he had a long baseball career, and he did play on some championship teams, and he did help the Braves reach a couple of pennants and things like that. Again, I don't have the numbers in front of me. He was a better baseball player, I think, than people realize. I think when people think about Deion Sanders, they think about those first couple years with the Yankees when he really wasn't very good. But then he went to the Braves, and he played very well with the Braves for a number of years, and he did. He played both sports at the exact same time. In fact, I think he left the Atlanta Falcons at one point to help the Braves in the playoffs, and then he went back. Yeah. So I think the true answer statistically over the course of a career, the answer is Deion Sanders. The athlete guy is definitely Jim Thorpe, and the coolest of them all was Bo Jackson. And I just wish he had never gotten hurt because he might have been the greatest ever.
300 1 year.
Yeah, he did. And, and Jack, you're right. I mean, Bo Jackson was a powerhouse in baseball and football. He was a powerhouse. So let's get, before Doctor has to leave here, the MLB owners, similar to Jerry Jones in football. We know Jerry Jones is a very public figure who loves the spotlight and loves to pay players and all that good stuff. And so we're going to go with Doc first since he's got to get out of here after this debate.
All right, so I get to go first. I'm going to have to pick, you surprised? George Steinbrenner. George definitely bigger than life, all about winning, all about the Yankee brand. Was not afraid to speak his mind, was not afraid to go with the media, make big points, be on TV, be on television commercials, have fun with it, fire his managers, bring his managers back, bring in the biggest and the best players. And the Cowboys in many ways are football's equivalent, at least they were, to the Yankees, the great team in the sport for decade after decade. And so I would have to pick Steinbrenner.
Well, before we get to the debate, because Jack, we may not have enough time because we might get cut off. Let's talk about what Steinbrenner really did for the Yankees. I mean, if you think about George Steinbrenner, he came in the Yankees back, I think it was in '73, if I'm correct, Jack and Doc, right? He came in, made a big splash with Catfish Hunter, took over a team that had been miserable when I was growing up as a Yankee. Their farm system was terrible. CBS owned them. Just put them on just for ratings, and eventually the team just became maybe a laughing stock of their division at that time. Steinbrenner comes in, worked in, I think it was shipping, and he not only made a splash. You figure the Yankees went to the World Series in '76, so it took 3 years. Not only did he make a splash with Catfish Hunter, but he also got that Yankee farm system together somewhat. I mean, he made a lot of moves that really built the Yankees into a powerhouse, winning the World Series, of course, in 77 and 78. And again, I think it was 80 or 81 when they went back again. I'm not sure.
81.
Right. So,
They
I mean,
were lucky in 81 to get
yes, and luck has a lot to do with it. But I mean,
Yeah.
That guy, for all his faults, and he had a lot of faults, the way he treated people and the way he kind of went against Major League Baseball and did his own thing, having big contracts with different media outlets. I mean, the man, you could hate him, but for Yankee fans in the position they were in when I was growing up, man, it was a welcome sight, because my father, of course, was a Yankee fan, and that's all he talked about. Mantle, Maris, Yogi Berra and that, and I never saw anything like that. So with all his faults, at least he produced World Series teams. And in the 90s, of course, the Yankees dominated under him still. So even though he kind of went to the background. So let's go to Doc first. Doc, what were you most impressed with about George Steinbrenner? And what were you most not mad about, but, kind of didn't think he should be doing what he was doing?
All right. So the Bronx Zoo stuff and the yelling at players and the Billy Martin thing, that just drove me crazy. You're fired, you're hired, that was just the constant meddling. Now here's my take on Steinbrenner, which I don't think anybody else really has ever brought up. And I think we talked about this before too. He came to the Yankees and he said, I'm going to build a winner. And he did, right? And he buys him in 73. By 76, during the World Series, he gets Catfish Hunter, I think, in 75. Then he brings in Reggie. Then he brings in Goose Gossage. And he builds this Yankee team that's phenomenal. They go to the World Series in 76. They win it in 77. They win it in 78. 79 was a disaster. In 1980, they make it back to the American League Championship Series. In 81, they go back to the World Series. And then everything falls apart, right? In the mid 80s and into the 90s, the Yankees were actually very good till about 1988. They were always a perennial contender, and then everything falls apart. In 82, they tried to go with speed over power, and he was constantly meddling. But the thing about Steinbrenner that's impressive is once he comes back from that second suspension in the 90s, he learned from those mistakes of the 80s and built a Yankee team that was not one where they just got rid of all the young players. He listened to his baseball people, and then he used his financial strength to put the other pieces around the edges to make the Yankees a constant World Series team, basically from 1995 until his death in 2009. That's what he did. He was all in to make the Yankees a winning team. And that's the thing that I think some fans are disappointed with the Yankees right now, because you just don't get the sense that they're all in and doing whatever they have to do to win. Steinbrenner, there was never a question. If there was a great player, he wanted him on the Yankees because he wanted the Yankees to be world champions.
Mac, you mentioned the farm system with Steinbrenner. Don't give him any credit about what he did with the farm system. Keep in mind, he was impulsive in the beginning when Steinbrenner was a owner. He used the farm system as chips to get more established players. True. And the ultimate disastrous deal he had, the Yankees traded away Fred McGriff, who turned out to have 493, I believe, career homers, and would have been a Hall of Famer had he stayed with the Yankees as their first baseman. Fred McGriff, to put it in perspective, was a better first baseman than Tino Martinez. If you had a choice between the two, Fred McGriff was the better of the two. Yet he traded him for a journeyman relief pitcher that didn't work out. What's his name? Jim Murray or something?
Dale Murray.
Okay. Yeah. And even Jeter remembers saying he was nervous when he was sent down to the minors. Can you imagine him and Rivera taking the bus being sent down to the mall.
On the same day. Yeah.
That I would have loved to have been on the ride with them if I could have spent a baseball experience as young men. Them not knowing what the future held for them as Yankees, that's unbelievable. But he had to be talked out of trading. He had to be talked out of trading Andy Pettitte when he was a young pitcher. Gene Michael had to argue with Steinbrenner. He saw Andy Pettitte's potential. So George was very impulsive, but I'll give him credit. Eventually, he could be talked out of things.
That's the point I'm making. Is he was impulsive and he did get rid of players. I actually wrote an article. I'll try to share it with you where I don't blame him for the McGriff deal, and I can get into that at another time. McGriff didn't become great for about 5 more years after they traded him. He was only in Single A when they got rid of him. But people do say Steinbrenner almost traded away Jeter. He almost traded away Petty. He almost traded away Rivera. But he didn't.
Well, he traded away Willie McGee, a young.
That was a bad one.
Potential to the St. Louis Cardinals. Then McGee has a great World Series in 1982 for the Cardinals.
And I think he wins 2 batting titles, or at least one of them.
And Steinbrenner says Willie McGee's no longer with our team, and neither is the scout who said he wasn't good enough to play for us. He tries to make a joke out of it. But bottom line, think of Willie McGee with the Yankees.
Oh, I agree with you on Willie McGee.
The second coming of Mickey Rivers, right?
Well, you can't get them all right, Jack, right? I mean, you can't get every one of them right. But, again, I mean, you guys got to see some of those, or at least Jack got to see some of those late 50s, early 60s World Series teams. I didn't
see the late 50s. I'm not.
Okay. Well, so anyway, I never got a chance to see those players play in their prime. So it was really good. I was so happy that the man did what he did and brought the Yankees back to.
Yeah, he was good for the Yankees.
Absolutely. So we'll let Doc go. We're going to do our timeout. We'll be back on the other side. Me and Jack will give you our picks of a Major League Baseball owner that's similar to Jerry Jones when we get back. Doc, again, thank you for coming in.
Sorry about the computer problems there.
Don't worry about it at all, Doc. I mean, we love having you on with your knowledge. Go check out Start Spreading the News, a great blog over there if you like the Yankees, and pick up his book, Scattering the Ashes, a great book, human interest story that has sports in it and great thing about family relations. Doc, thank you for coming in again. And we'll
see you next week.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So there you go, Jack. Dr. Paul Semendinger, always a pleasure having him.
Yankee expert.
Oh, and Major League Baseball, too. I mean, the man knows a lot about baseball, period. So we love having him on. And so, Jack, what we're going to do is we're going to take our break. We'll come back on the other side, folks. We'll be discussing who we think is the Major League Baseball equivalent to Jerry Jones. And we got some more debate stuff coming for you, folks. Some real good topics. Stay with us, please. I'm going to do the sound effects instead of the computer, Jack. Be right back, folks.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station. If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org. We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. I'm your host, Jack, with your co-host, the legendary boxing writer, Jack Hirsch. And we're on Wednesday through Sunday, Jack, 8 to 10 a.m. But tomorrow, Jack, we have an incredible Super Bowl show. We hope that all you guys join us. We'll be going 3 hours, 8 to 11 a.m. We'll have on live from the Super Bowl Jamie Paggs, the Philly sports guy, doing interviews. We have all the shows coming on. We also have Byron Williams, a former NFL wide receiver, in his camp. And we also, looks like we're going to have actual Super Bowl player on, maybe representing the 86 Giants, Jack. So,
Mac, you're not promoting our great Super Bowl show enough. You're mentioning it now. How do you know everyone came back from the break? They might be joining us a couple of minutes later, and you might not mention it again, Mac. We're on 8 to 11 tomorrow. We added a full hour.
yes, we did.
Hour.
And we will be joined. We'll be joined, Jack, by our friends from TGI Sports, Keith Angle and Robert Butler from Sports Scope. So they'll be on right away with us. We'll have all kinds of guests on. It's going to be a real fun show.
We're going to have guests that former players, experts that know a lot about football. We're even having guests that know very little about football,
right?
An opinion.
Exactly.
We're having a wide scope.
Yes, we are, Jack. So it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow, folks. So please join us. We'll be streaming right to our YouTube channel, right to Northeast Streaming Sports, which we're happy to be part of. And we'll also be on Twitch Live and Twitter. I mean, we'll have all the shows sharing everywhere. It's going to be a great show, and hopefully everybody out there can join us tomorrow. Bring a cup of coffee and get ready for your Super Bowl day, starting with us at 8 a.m. tomorrow, Jack, right on Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook page. You can go there and check us out, or go to our YouTube channel that we're on right now. So I really can't wait for it. It's going to be a fun time. Folks, you know, we're sponsored by BSTBreaks.com and the Fanatics Sports store. They're both great sponsors, and they have a lot to do with the success of our show. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it should be a real fun show, Jack, and I just can't wait to get going tomorrow. But we still got the rest of our show to do today. So Doc gave his opinion of the Major League Baseball owner, similar to Jerry Jones in football, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. He came up with George Steinbrenner. So I go first in this one, Jack. And I was, you're talking about history of the game. I mean, you can come up with a lot of owners. So I went with the current day owner of the California Angels, Anaheim Angels, the Anaheim Angels from LA. I mean, there's like 3 different names they've had since he's been owner. And that's Artie Marino. So calling an audible on you, Jack, I went with this one. I mean, Steinbrenner on whole was probably more successful than any of the other owners we're going to talk about. There was a connection between Steinbrenner and Jones that the doc didn't bring up, where he was actually the vendor for the Yankees for a while Steinbrenner was the owner. But anyway, with Artie, he kind of takes the same approach as all these famous owners do. They love to be in the spotlight. They interact with the fans. They get directly involved in team operations. But as far as lately, more comparable owner in MLB, I think, is Artie Marino, assembling talent, paying a lot of money for not a lot of results, really, Jack. Dallas Cowboys picked up Zeke Elliott, arguably one of the best running backs in the NFL last year. Martin, the Cowboys picked up one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. Dak Prescott, top 10 quarterback. The Angels' best player, maybe in baseball today, I would argue is of course Mike Trout, and he's got a very high salary. They also went and got Pujols, future Hall of Famer, Jack. They signed him to, I think it was $30 million a year. Vladimir Guerrero, they signed him when he first came in, and as I suggested, or I said, that he changed the name of the Los Angeles Angels 3 times. Actually ticking off the Anaheim City Council so bad they sued him. So he kind of went under the that's when he changed it to the Anaheim Angels from Los Angeles to try to get out of that predicament he was. So he got sued, and from 2001 to 2009 they went to 3 consecutive division championships. In 2014 finished with 98 wins. And just as I said, before the 2006 season, Moreno, he signs a lucrative deal with Fox Sports for 10 years. He signs Bundy, Butcher, and Cobb to big contracts. Lou Holtz is in the infield, as I said. Trout in the outfield. He has Upton. He spent a lot of money for Upton to be also one of the outfielders. I think that was for $23 million. Cobb and Fowler together, $29 million. I mean, a lot of money for not great results. Jerry Jones had success in the beginning too, with signing, getting all those players he did when he had Jimmy Johnson there, and then Jimmy Johnson ended up leaving for some reason. He brings in another coach who coached Jimmy Johnson's team to another Super Bowl. But after that, the Dallas Cowboys, Jack, haven't been to the Super Bowl or won a championship since. So those are the similarities I draw between the two. Both love the spotlight, both good businessmen, but both have failed, at least lately, to bring their teams to the ultimate game.
Okay, Mac, there's no other owner who's going to be exactly like Jerry Jones in Major League Baseball, any other sport, because Jerry Jones is very smooth. I was thinking of giving the name Steve Cohen, the new owner of the Mets, but he doesn't have a body of work.
Right.
He's just started. He's a rookie owner. Let's leave him alone. The guy I'm going to most compare to Jerry Jones, he acts like Jerry Jones. He does what Jerry Jones does, but he's not as smooth. He's a bit more abrasive. Jerry Jones isn't outwardly abrasive because he's smooth, But this guy, Charlie Finley, it was the major league owner, or was a major league owner who was most like Jerry Jones. He acted like a GM the way Jerry Jones did. Jerry Jones was the GM of the Cowboys, is the GM of the Cowboys, and Charlie Finley made all the baseball decisions for the Athletics. Now, when he first got the Kansas City Athletics, he was a wheeler and dealer. Like Jerry Jones built Jerry's World, he tried to come in with the splash Charlie Finley. He got the Beatles to appear at Kansas City in the stadium and perform. And John Lennon was complaining about Charlie Finley because the Beatles had a contract to perform for 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, Finley tried to milk more songs out of them without paying extra money. So he got into a dispute with the Beatles. Listen to this. Jimmy Johnson, if you want to parallel, the Cowboy coach, after winning 2 Super Bowls in a row, he couldn't take Jerry Jones anymore, so he moved on. Dick Williams, the manager of the Oakland Athletics, after winning 2 World Series in a row under Charlie Finley, he moved on. But guess what? 2 years later, Jerry Jones does win another Super Bowl with another coach, Barry Switzer, and Charlie Finley wins a World Series the year after Dick Williams leaves with another manager, Alvin Dark. Charlie Finley take Jerry Jones, his contract dispute with Zach Prescott. He's smooth in the way he's handling it, but nothing got done. Charlie Finley had the same contract dispute with the rookie sensation Vida Blue. Vida Blue caught the baseball world by storm, was the most charismatic player in the game at the time. He was getting $15,000 a year as a rookie. And at that time, they would sign a lot of one-year contracts. Vida Blue wanted $100,000 the following year because of the economics. People would pack stadiums when he pitched, and he made Finley a fortune of money. Finley gives him a raise, offers from $15,000 to $50,000, and tells Vida Blue, he says, Blue, either you take my offer or you're out of baseball. He does it abrasively. Jerry Jones does it in a smoother way. Basically, either you take my offer or blah, blah, blah. The Cowboys are considered America's team. They do things in a fancy way. Charlie Finley would constantly change the uniforms of the players.
Yeah, I remember.
The Cowboys are considered the most charismatic team in football in general, with their characters. Look at the Oakland Athletic teams, Catfish Hunter, Reggie Jackson, and all those guys. They'd be fighting amongst themselves. There'd be turmoil. They'd always be in the news. And he always tried to gain an edge like Jerry Jones. When he was with the Kansas City Athletic owner, before the Kansas City became the Oakland A's, he moved in the right field fence because he wanted to match what they did at Yankee Stadium. And he was just one of these owners who was always in the media eye, like Jerry Jones. And Charlie Finley was an insurance salesman by trade, and Jerry Jones is an oil guy. But they were both considered great salesmen. So Charlie Finley, if you take away the rough edges, and there were many, he was the owner that was most resembled Jerry Jones.
Great job, Jack. I forgot about changing uniforms. I remember that now. That's some great info. So, Finley was a character, and they did a movie based off him. If I'm correct, right, Jack? Wasn't that Moneyball or something they did based off?
No, that Moneyball that was Billy Beane.
Billy B. That's right. That's
Billy
right.
Beane, the GM, the current GM of the Athletics.
That's right.
Who went on analytics and all that. Your thing with Artie Moreno, I'll disagree only on this perspective. Artie Moreno, you don't see him in the Angels box. He's not in the limelight the way these other guys are. George Steinbrenner was always in the limelight. Charlie Finley's always in the limelight. Jerry Jones, obviously, is always in the limelight. Yeah. Robert Kraft, to a degree, is in the limelight. A lot of owners, are not in the limelight. The cameras don't go on them on the box because you're not as charismatic.
Well, what he did, Jack, what Marino did was that he went and he sat with the fans, and that's what the fans loved about him. He would actually go out and talk to the fans. He would go on the field. He did like the limelight, believe it or not, Jack. I mean, they really loved him in the beginning until he started messing around with the name.
Well,
which
Jerry Jones sits in his box all the time, in his special box. You don't see him sitting with the fans. Listen,
he'll go on the field. He'll go on the field, Jack, before the game. Jerry Jones. He'll go on the field. Yeah.
Listen, Jerry Jones might be disliked in some quarters. Finley was despised. If you recall the 1973 World Series, the Oakland Athletics against the New York Mets, the Oakland Athletics second baseman Mike Andrews made a couple of errors that cost the Athletics a game, and Finley kicked him off the team.
Wow.
But there was a big uproar between the players threatening not to play, the fans. Everyone went crazy. And I think the commissioner told Finley Andrews got to get reinstated because everyone was in an uproar over how mean Finley could be. So Finley reinstated Andrews. Yeah.
Great information, Jack. So we're going to get to the greatest Super Bowl performance by an individual, Jack. And you go first on this one. And who do you got for the greatest Super Bowl performance?
I don't have many hard stats on this, but in Super Bowl 51, when the Patriots came from behind to beat the Falcons 28-3, I want to say Tom Brady, because Tom Brady couldn't make a mistake for them to come back. Everything had to go perfect in that game, meaning the Falcons had to, make certain mistakes, not move the ball. And we all know when the Falcons could have iced the game, they were in field goal range with an 8-point lead late in the game. All their quarterback, Matt Ryan, had to do was take a knee and wait. And then that kicker had to kick a field goal, and it was all over. The Falcons would have been Super Bowl champions. But the Falcons get hit for loss. Then there's a penalty. And before you know it, they're out of field goal range. Tom Brady, for that half, when he brought the Patriots back, was the greatest player of all time, greatest quarterback of all time. He did something Montana, Marino, Elway, Manning, Unitas, no one would have done. I'm going to say it point blank. I mean, it couldn't just be outstanding doesn't describe how great he was. I mean, everything went perfect. In fact, the analytics came on the screen showing the Falcons at one point in the game in the second half. They show you that win probability. It was something like 99.2% certainty the Falcons were going to win the game.
Yeah.
Can you imagine overcoming odds of more than 99% against you?
Yeah.
That's what Brady did. It was a miracle half in which he did everything, got a couple of touchdowns, the 2-point conversions, kept it going. And there was really no margin of error in that game. And they sent it into overtime. And they even won the coin toss, the Patriots, about everything going perfect, and took it down the field. He imposed his will on the Falcons that day. I mean, you could argue that they've been better quarterbacks than Tom Brady if you want. If you want to argue with me and tell me Tom Brady is the 6th best quarterback in NFL history, you can make that argument. You can make an argument Unitas was better. You can make an argument Rodgers is better. You can make an argument Mahomes, Manning are better. That's a fair argument. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's a fair argument. But what he did that second half with the Falcons was off the charts. I mean, that to me was the greatest performance in Super Bowl history. What he did in the second half.
That's tremendous. And I got a second half comeback for you too, Jack. And to throw a little bit, to make this a little more mind-blowing out there, let me fill you in. The Giants selected him at number 1 in 1979 from Morehead State. The fan said, Phil, who, from where? And you think the fun made the ridicule the Giants got for picking Daniel Jones, it was, you have no idea, Jack. Little did they know about quarterback Phil Simms that Bill Walsh was going to take him if the Giants didn't, and there would have been no Joe Montana. at the San Francisco 49ers. In the next few years, it got so bad, he was back up to a guy named Scott Bruner, a terrible quarterback, and wanted to be traded. So Bill Parcells makes him the starting quarterback finally, and within 3 years, the Giants go to the Super Bowl in 1986. Not because of Sims, Jack. It was because of the defense, one of the greatest defenses in NFL history. A running game with Joe Morris that was one of the best in the league at the time. And they were matched up against the Denver Broncos and a future Hall of Famer named John Elway. Sims was a captain at the time during that year, but he wasn't even allowed to go out on the field, Jack. They only sent out Harry Carson, the captain of that great defense. So the Giants were all about the defense. In the first half, at the end of the first half, Jack, Denver was leading the Giants 10-9. And the running game wasn't working as well as it was during the year, and the Giants turned to Phil Sims, and he answered with 22 of 25 pass attempts and completions for 268 yards and 3 touchdowns, and 88% completion rate. Broke all Super Bowl and playoff records, Jack. He also ran, believe it or not a runner, but he ran for 25 yards and 3 carries. It also broke the Super Bowl record of coming from behind at the time and scoring 30 unanswered points in the second half. Sims had a solid career as a Giants quarterback before getting hurt in 1990 season, where Giants were off to a 10-0 start, but got a season-ending injury, and would have been the quarterback against the Bills in the Super Bowl that year. It would have been a totally different game. He led the Giants to a couple more playoff contending years. His last year, he threw for over 4,000 yards. But what a performance that day, Jack. A guy that was ridiculed as being the first-round draft pick was behind a guy named Scott Bruner, who nobody remembers anymore. And without the help of the rules of today, Jack, you could hit the quarterback at that time without getting penalized. You could hit the receivers at that time without getting penalized for whatever calls they make today to protect them. So it was a different age, a more physical age, and a very physical quarterback with some really good receivers that weren't known, that weren't up to the level maybe of the stars at the time of a Jerry Rice and people like that, receivers like that, as Steve Largent. He has a half that's one for the ages, Jack. 88% completion rating, 22 out of 25, 3 touchdowns. And for that half, to me, Jack, I mean, Tom Brady, that was unbelievable. But to me, to throw with that much accuracy, to bring the Giants back and win that second half was the best performance I've ever seen.
Phil Sims did a great job. Kudos to him. I don't want to take anything away from him. I mean, he did. There was a deflection that Phil McConkey caught, but he was like a surgeon, Phil Sims. I mean, found the openings, and he was great. He was great, but the Bronco defense was lacking a bit. I mean, but Phil Sims, I mean, no other quarterback could have done better than what Phil Sims did. No other quarterback, but there are the. But I'm going to ask you this. If Tom Brady was quarterbacking the Giants instead of Phil Sims, he probably could have done what Phil Sims did. Phil Sims, there is absolutely no way would have done what Tom Brady did against the Falcons.
Well,
Phil Sims would not have even been close.
That's not even fair, Jack, because Phil Sims, the Atlanta defense was nothing special either, Jack, please. And Phil Sims playing as he played, throwing as he did on a great New England Patriots football team, there may be some doubt, but I think that Phil Sims could have brought him back too, Jack.
Yeah, well, Phil Sims would not. Phil Sims would have been stopped at the gate and wouldn't have even been allowed in the stadium if he had to perform or do what Tom Brady did. It is so far.
I don't know, Jack.
Phil Sims could have even come anywhere near what Tom Brady did.
I disagree because he did, Jack.
Was not allowed to have one bad play in that second.
He did, and I don't think that Phil Sims had one bad play either in that game. So he did do what Brady did, Jack. He did bring him back and score.
Listen, the Giant receivers were open. A lot of quarterbacks.
And you don't think the Atlanta? Wait a minute. And you don't think the Atlanta Falcons the New England Patriots receivers weren't open, Jack? I mean,
the Giants were so much better than Denver. A lot of quarterbacks would have led the Giants to victory in the second half. A lot. They wouldn't have been as impressive as Phil.
Well, let me tell you, Jack. Let me tell you, Jack.
Quarterback in the history of the NFL would have led the Patriots back the way Tom Brady did. I disagree with that.
I disagree with that. I think Johnny Unitas could have done it. I think that Joe Montana definitely could have done it. I think that Patrick Mahomes right now could do it.
You want to know something?
To say that, that's a matter of opinion. We don't know that.
Those guys didn't do it because you know what would have happened with Unitas Montana? If Phil Simms was in when the Patriots were down 28-3, the Patriots not only wouldn't have come back, they would have lost by 3 touchdowns.
Well, I disagree with that, Jack. I totally disagree with that. I totally disagree with that. And I'm telling you right now, if Brady played in the 80s, he would not be as effective as he is today. If you want to know my honest opinion, Tom Brady cries about every hit. They changed rules because of Tom Brady getting hit in the knee. Back then, they would break you in half if they could, and they would hit the receivers. If you think for 1 minute, if you really believe that Brady could have made it in a tougher division, I disagree with that. His stats would not only not be that good, he might not even have lasted, Jack. And I'm telling you right now, if Brady played during the 1980s or earlier, he sure wouldn't be as good as he is today. No way.
They say LeBron James, if he played in the 80s, wouldn't be as good because he'd get hit more and the game was more physical. You hear that stuff all the time.
And this is truth.
I'm not judging the greatness of these other quarterbacks. Like I said before, if you want to rate them ahead of Tom Brady, some of the other all-time greats, it's a fair argument.
But we're not talking about that, Jack. You're saying that no other quarterback could have done that. I disagree with that.
No other quarterback.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I think Terry Bradshaw would have came close. I think Roger Staubach would have came close. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks that would have came close and might have even done it, Jack, and might not have got behind 37-0. How's that?
99% probability working against them.
So I guess he had a bad first half, didn't he, Jack?
Mac,
I guess he had a bad first half.
You're probably saying after the guy hit the power lotto in Maryland or wherever. Well, had we gone on board a ticket, we could have won too. That's
the odds, Jack. But we're not talking about that. You made a blanket statement. You made a blanket statement that no other quarterback could have done that. I'm disagreeing with you. I think there's a lot of other quarterbacks that could have done that or might have been able to do that. And I also think that Tom Brady must have had a terrible first half if they were down 35-0.
No argument. Right.
Okay.
So he was so in the first half. I'm not going to argue that point.
So maybe no other quarterback would have gotten that position, Jack. So we could debate that all day, but to say no other quarterback could do that. There has been other quarterbacks that have brought the team from behind, Jack, and the Atlanta Falcons had not the greatest defense in the league at the time. So that's all.
Brady imposed his will on them.
Listen, it was an unbelievable performance. I gave it to you, Jack, but please don't act like Brady could have played in the 80s or the 70s with teams hitting him all the time. He cries if somebody breathes on him the wrong way. So, that's just
you think he wouldn't have made it in the 70s, 80s? You're the guy, when he got drafted, wow. You're probably a 6th-round draft pick, so you saw what the scouts did.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. In the 70s, he might not even got drafted, Jack. That's how weak he is. I respect Tom Brady.
How do you argue with that?
But anyway, Jack, let's take our last time out, and we'll be back, folks, right after this. We still got some topics to debate. Hopefully they're as lively as the last one. So we'll be right back after this, folks. And stick with us.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting the stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, legendary boxing writer, former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, the great Jack Hirsch. And our debate show, Jack, is in its last half hour. And to remind everybody, we got that great Super Bowl show coming up tomorrow. So please join us, folks, from 8 to 11 a.m., streaming on Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Twitch. We'll also have some watch parties going on, Jack. I mean, Keith's going to set us up with his site where he's going to be doing a watch party live to all his listeners. We'll have the Philly Sports Guy live from the Super Bowl. Great guests all day long. So folks, get a cup of coffee, a bagel, or an English muffin. Open us up and listen to probably.
There you go, Mac. Why are you telling people what they should eat? You think they can't think that out themselves?
You know, I'm just trying to give some.
They want to get scrambled eggs or whatever, an omelet or whatever, cold
Right.
cereal, oatmeal,
Yeah.
whatever the heck they want to eat, and you're telling them specifically. I mean,
Yeah, well, Jack, I like bagels and English muffins. I'm just thinking, I'm part of the crowd. I don't know, maybe not. So, we're going to go next, Jack, in our debate to the most underrated performance. We gave our opinion on the greatest individual performance, and the most underrated performance I go first with. And check out these stats, Jack. Super Bowl, 204 yards of rushing, right? 2 TDs. You would think an easy choice as an MVP Super Bowl. It just so happened he played on a Redskin Super Bowl team, and that's what they were called at the time, that had Doug Williams as their quarterback. The 1987 Redskins are known for John Riggins through the years. They're known for George Rogers, a group of wide receivers known as the Fun Bunch, an offensive line known as the Hogs. A running back named Timmy Smith came out of nowhere, and he replaced George Rogers during the playoffs, and he stole the show in the Super Bowl, Jack. He had the great size and speed that any running back could have, but he had poor working ethic, Jack, where he didn't really prepare for games, and he didn't participate in pregame and preseason workouts. He was a unbelievable explosion in the Super Bowl. And maybe if he was a well-known star, he would have won it. Maybe if Doug Williams didn't have that great second half and wasn't the first black quarterback to win the Super Bowl history, he might have been different. But for that day, Timmy Smith was the most explosive running back in Super Bowl history, Jack. He has all the records as far as rushing goes. We think about that Super Bowl, Jack, and we think about Doug Williams and the great game he had in the second half. And I still remember that game vividly, Jack. And Williams set the other team on fire. But I also remember that big breakaway 58 touchdown run by Smith, and how this guy I'd never heard of broke records for rushing in the Super Bowl. And he's even on the NFL films the second one and done player in history in the top 10. What a game he had, Jack. And I'll tell you right now, if not for Doug Williams, he would have won the MVP that year.
You mentioned second half, Doug Williams. You mean second quarter.
True.
That game, the Washington Redskins in Super Bowl 22 beat the Denver Broncos 40-10. If you take away the second quarter and count first quarter and the second half, then the Broncos outscored them 10-7. Washington scored a ridiculous 35 points in the second quarter. Who scores 35 points in the quarter? That's utterly ridiculous. Ridiculous. That shows you how pathetic the Bronco defense was. Anyone could have run, through the Bronco defense then. That's how bad they were. Look, Timmy Smith had a great game, 204 yards. Big holes opened up for him. And he took advantage of them. Okay, he only played 3 years in the NFL, so this wasn't a superstar running back who was overpowering the Broncos. The Broncos were just plain awful. My choice is for Super Bowl III, and Super Bowl III is remembered for Joe Namath guaranteeing the Jets are going to beat the Colts. That's the most famous Super Bowl performance of all, and it might be the most overrated as well, but that's another question. Namath played a wonderful ball control game. His game management was outstanding, but the bottom line is Joe Willie was 17 for 28 on pass attempts, did not throw a touchdown in the Jets' 16-7 win. He relied on his running game, notably Matt Snell. Matt Snell carried the ball 30 times for 121 yards. He caught 4 passes for 40 yards. He blocked superbly. He even played some special teams. He scored the only touchdown of the game. In the fourth quarter, the coach, Weeb Eubanks, says to Joe Namath, let's put in a passing play. Namath says, no, coach, we're running the ball really well. No need to. Matt Snell ate up the clock for the Jets. Matt Snell wasn't a fly-by-night player like Timmy Smith. Had 3 years in the NFL. He wasn't devoted. You know, he was troubled. No one could ever take away from him his great performance. And maybe he should have been MVP that game over Doug Williams. You make a good point, Matt. Maybe I agree with you, but it was hard not to give it to Doug Williams being the first black quarterback, considering all the injustices that black quarterbacks before Doug Williams had to go through, being made into wide receivers, not being allowed to pursue their dream. So in a way, it was symbolic that Doug Williams get the award. But you could argue Timmy Smith was the true MVP if we overlook the other factors. Matt Snell was with the Jets his whole 9-year career. He was a 3-time All-Star. He was a Rookie of the Year. And they knew what they had in Matt Snell. And compare the teams, okay? Timmy Smith had his performance against any team that gives up 5 touchdowns in 1 quarter. Their defense, that's pathetic. That's pathetic. That means they don't have a good defense. So I know they got to the Super Bowl, however, but that says more about how weak the other teams were in the conference and how good the Broncos were. But Matt Snell did what he did against a great Baltimore Colt team. The Baltimore Colt team he played was 13-1 during the regular season. Their one loss, they avenged in the playoffs against the Vikings. And in the NFC Championship game, they beat the Browns 34-0. They shut them out. He was running against a great Colt team who 2 years later, with basically the same amount of players after they'd lost to the Jets, the Colts won the Super Bowl to show you how good they were. And, you know, it's Matt Snell. We're talking about underrated here. We're not talking about best performance necessarily. We're talking about underrated performance. That's all we're talking about. Timmy Smith's performance, I don't know if people underrating it. They know how great he was. To this day, people argue who should have been the MVP, Timmy Smith or Doug Williams. Okay? I think everyone recognizes how great Timmy Smith was. But Super Bowl III, all people still talk about Joe Namath guaranteeing the win. History has forgotten Matt Snell. History has forgotten him.
Well, I'll bring up a couple points with what you're saying there. I don't think either one of them would have been eligible for MVP if Johnny Unitas was healthy. I don't think the Jets would have won that game, period. The Jets defense should have been the MVP of that game, Jack. I mean, they intercepted the ball, I think, 4 or 5 times. They had Earl Morrall looking like a backup quarterback that game. Their defense played tremendous that game. Matt Snell was a great, solid running back. You're talking about a person who's underrated. I think the Jets defense won that game, and the absence of Johnny Unitas is what won that game. I don't think Joe Namath was the MVP of that Super Bowl. If you had to give it a single person, I agree with you. It should have been Matt Snell.
Well, you could say underrated performance as a unit, the Jet defense. I mean, we're talking about individual underrated performance.
Right. And I don't have the stats in front of me. I don't know if somebody intercepted the ball more, who played a better role on the defense.
Randy Beverly intercepted, had 2 interceptions for the Jets. Johnny Sample had 1 interception. Jim Hudson had an interception.
Right, and I don't have the lineman in front of me who might have been huge on the defensive line. So I don't have that information in front of me to debate maybe a defensive player should have won that.
Well, it's a team effort. I mean, I could start naming individual
players. Right. But
Matt's team effort,
But Matt Snell was a good running back, Jack. There's no doubt about that. Great in that. The only reason why I say Timmy Smith over Matt Snell is because Timmy Smith was only in the league for 3 years, whether it was his fault or not. And to me, to break the Super Bowl rushing record, to have a couple TDs, and to explode like he did during that game, I know it's the offensive line. You have to give credit to the offensive line for every running back. I mean, without a solid offensive line, you're not going to move the ball, period. And the Redskins just happen to have one of the best offenses.
Redskins would have won that game no matter who was there. I mean, Timmy Smith was great, but they would actually won. And maybe it wouldn't have been quite as big a blowout, but it's obvious the Redskins would have won.
I agree with that,
Who was
Jack.
that running?
I agree with that too.
That
But
might not have actually won the game had Matt Snell not been there.
maybe,
Matt
maybe.
Snell came up empty in that game. It's it's not a certainty.
Well, I guarantee you, if the Jets didn't play defense the way they played and United started, they would definitely not have won that game. But again, I mean, I believe that. You could say that was an underrated performance. The reason why I'm saying Timmy Smith, and you say a lot of people think about Timmy Smith, I don't hear it, Jack. All I hear is Doug Williams was the MVP of the Super Bowl and what a great game he had. I don't hear about Timmy Smith. In fact, I had to look at him again.
That's fair.
So anyway, I think two good examples on that. So we have the greatest Super Bowl game in the history. And Jack, that's a lot of choices. So you go first in this one and tell me who you got.
No, I wanted to go with the Jets over the Colts, but that wasn't the greatest game. That was the biggest upset in Super Bowl history.
Most important
and
Super
the
Bowl.
most important.
Yes.
But not quite the greatest game. It was a methodical game. It was a low-scoring game. And it had maybe the most drama that we were going to see, But no, I was thinking of the Giants and Bills, the wide right kick. That was a heck of a game, but they didn't really open it up, that game. It was more or less a pounding game, old-fashioned football. For pure entertainment, I like Super Bowl 13, in which the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Cowboys 35-31. I mean, there were so many storylines in that game. There were 16 NFL Hall of Famers as players playing in that game, 10 from the Steelers, 6 for the Cowboys. The defenses were so charismatic. The Pittsburgh Steelers steel curtain against the Dallas Cowboys doomsday defense.
Yeah.
The coaches, Tom Landry, and Chuck Noll, matching wits there. Listen, there were even guys you don't realize, famous NFL players that slipped under the radar. Mike Ditka, we think of him as a playing coach of the Bears. He was an assistant coach with the Cowboys on that staff. Tony Dungy, who we think of as a coach, he was a safety for the Steelers in those games. And I'm not even counting those guys amongst the Hall of Famers as players. Okay? The greatest collection of players, a Super Bowl game, and it also had the NFL's version of the Bill Buckner play in baseball with Jackie Smith in the end zone.
Yeah.
Jackie Smith is in the Hall of Fame, but all people remember him for is the drop pass in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Now, it was only half Jackie Smith's fault. Roger Staubach saw Jackie Smith wide open in the back of the end zone, and he threw the ball a bit low. Bit low. Jackie Smith, to his credit, he admits he should have caught the ball. But what should have been a simple pass, an easy to catch one, became somewhat difficult. So Roger Staubach, to his credit, also said it best. 50% my fault, 50% Jackie's, and that was the most accurate assessment. That game had characters. Hollywood Henderson for the Cowboys, all the ballyhoo beforehand with his big mouth, saying the Steelers are nothing and this and that, what they're going to do.
Terry Bradshaw is dumb.
Build up.
Yeah.
Great Kurt Gowdy. That was his 7th and last Super Bowl game. He called, and what people don't realize, and it couldn't take place in this day and age, NBC that broadcast the game, they weren't sure until the last moment who was going to be the lead broadcaster, Kurt Gowdy or Dick Enberg, and then they eventually went with Kurt Gowdy, giving him his farewell at the last moment. Imagine that taking place in this day and age. Al Michaels and another guy, and NBC doesn't know until the last moment who's going to call the game, like they're waiting around. And the game itself, in which the Steelers won 35-31, had so many big plays by so many great players. I mean, Bradshaw handing off to Franco Harris, throwing to Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, Roger Staubach doing his thing. And the build up to the game. It was Hollywood stuff. It was fun stuff. It had so many personalities. Tomorrow's Super Bowl is great, but it basically comes down to Brady and Mahomes is all we're hearing. There's some other players, obviously great players being mentioned, but everywhere you looked in Super Bowl 13 with the Steelers and the Cowboys, in which the Steelers won 35-31, there were great players galore wherever, and coaches wherever you looked.
Oh, man, a great pick, Jack. I mean, I remember that Super Bowl like it was yesterday. And you know, most Super Bowls are remembered for the huge comeback, a missed catch like in Jackie Smith's case, a missed field goal, a great running back quarterback performance, a huge catch in the last seconds like with Steelers against the Cardinals. And Jack, there have been some incredible Super Bowls: Steelers, Cowboys, Rams, Panthers, Pats against the Giants, Patriots against the Falcons, like you mentioned. So I'm going to take a look at it from a different perspective, where it came down to a highly questionable call at the end of the game that seemed like it was going to be a win on offense. An incredible play by a defensive back, Jack, a defensive play at the end of the game, who knew what was happening before the play started. And, you know, he knew this through film study and team preparation. He didn't get caught up in the moment, Jack. As a player, you study players that you match up with, right? I mean, that you're matched up against. As a coach, you study the offensive and defensive tendencies, what they're really good at and what they're not so good at. And as I said, you know, in the past, I think of football as a violent chess game, Jack, right? If one person makes a move, you make another. You imagine what the next move he's going to do. And as basic reads of a player on a defensive line, for example, Jack, you kind of know when it's going to be a running play because the offensive lineman's more up on his toes and he's leaning forward, as opposed to a pass where he's more flat-footed and maybe in a two-point stance. You pretty much know it's going to be a run. So if you're blitzing, you know, you got to cover the open zone. There's a hot read. As players and coaches, you teach this, you study this. But then it comes game time, and you got to execute this stuff. And you can't get caught up in what's going on at the time. You got to stay within yourself, what you do. And a lot of players don't do that, and that's how come they lose the game. So the Seattle Seahawks are battling the Patriots, right? The Seahawks jump out to lead. Brady brings them back in the second half. The Seahawks go fall behind the Patriots, and the Seahawks are driving. They're driving down the field. There's only like 26 seconds left, Jack. It's 1st and goal from the 5. They hand the ball off to the beast, Marshawn Lynch, who was tearing up the NFL, a hard, gifted runner who was in his prime and running hard. And as I said, they had the ball, 1st and goal at the 5. They let the clock run down. They run the ball with Lynch. He picks up 4 yards. He gets him down to the 1 yard line, Jack. And I don't know why they're not calling a timeout. They have a chance to call a timeout and think about what they're going to call next. But again, here go the coaches not getting caught up in the moment, not using their heads. So they let the play run down. It's 2nd and goal at the 1. Marshawn Lynch just picked up 4. So what does Pete Carroll let happen? He says, well, we're going to call a pass play. We're not going to run Marshawn Lynch again. We're going to throw a pass. And the defensive back at that time saw the formation. He recognized it. He was coached up for this formation, and he didn't get caught up in it. He didn't get it close to the line of scrimmage and look for that run. Marshawn Lynch is coming. He doesn't do that. He sees the play develop. He sees what they're going to do. He sees Lockett making his move, coming behind a pick play by the tight end. And defensive safety Butler reads the play to a T, Jack. He's coached. He's ready for that moment. He plays within himself. He meets Lockett at the ball. They both collide. He intercepts the ball, Jack. If he wasn't there, easy touchdown. But they stayed within themselves. They did with the film study. They did what they were coached to do, and the coaches knew they were going to do this. Me, I'll tell you, Jack, honestly, I would have been up near the line of scrimmage. I'm expecting Marshawn Lynch to run with the ball, and that's what they should have done, and we all know that. I mean, that was a crazy call. But it was a move that they thought would trick the Patriots, and it didn't. It didn't. They were well coached. They did the film study, and a defensive back, Jack, was the hero of the game at the end of the game, not Tom Brady. It was unbelievable.
I was watching NFL highlights. That's a great example. Great pick, Mac. NFL highlights of that game, and it showed when the game was over. With the Malcolm Butler interception, Tom Brady's talking to the guys on defense as soon as it's over, and they're all smiling. And he goes over to Malcolm Butler, and he says, "Malcolm, are you kidding me?" Like he couldn't believe it. That play made. What a bonehead play by Pete Carroll. Not to run the ball. Listen, if you can't beat them with Marshall Lynch, with 3 shots to hand off from that area, you don't deserve to win at that point, but you are going to beat him. Marshall Lynch, is probably going to score. You never know what could happen. He could fumble. Maybe the Patriots stuff him. You can never tell for sure.
Right.
Probably. But why put the ball in the air? Why get cute, the element of surprise? Because everyone's thinking Marshall Lynch is going to run, so you're going to pass. I mean, no need to do that. And if you were going to pass, fake a handoff, roll out, and put Russell Wilson in a spot where he'll throw the ball away.
Exactly.
I maybe understand that.
Exactly.
But why get so cute at that point? I mean, the end of your pick in the debate was much better than mine. Because the Steelers went up 35-17. The Cowboys got 2 touchdowns, 35-31, and they didn't make the onside kick at the end. The drama of your thing, there was some talk also that Pete Carroll didn't call a logical play to Marshall Lynch. There was some whispers that he didn't particularly like Marshall Lynch that much, which I think was disproved later when Lynch came back to the Seahawks. But the talk was that he wanted Russell Wilson to be the MVP. Okay?
Right.
That was some talk. It was never proven in any way. And it's amazing. You could have it just shows in coaching, Mac, as a player, you could have an unbelievable career and you do just one stupid play or one bad play, one miscue. And that's what they'll remember about you.
Yeah. And Jack, they had time to call a timeout, to come in with a good play, to maybe run the ball, as you said, which I think would have been a good call as well, to fake it to Marshawn Lynch and then roll out or something where you got Russell Wilson, able to either run or pass with the ball. That would have been a second best play to call, because now at least you're faking the run. But to actually just run that one pass play that you've done in the past, you should know that the Patriots, being well coached as they were, would have been ready for that. But the Patriots didn't get caught up in the moment. And, maybe the Seattle Seahawks should have got caught up in the moment and powered it in. And I love that a defensive play at the end of the game is what ends up winning the Super Bowl.
And I'll just mention this very quickly. And then the Patriots' next Super Bowl, Bill Belichick tells Malcolm Butler right before the game, "You're not starting," and he played very little. And Tom Brady played a great game, over 500 passing yards. But the New England secondary got torched by the Eagles.
Yeah.
And had Malcolm Butler been in, maybe the Patriots win. And we never know the full story behind that.
That's a very fair point, Jack. We're down to about 3 minutes left. And we normally do a Who's Better segment, folks, at the end of the show, where Jack tells me who's better. So I'm going to get one in for you, Jack, and you tell me who is better at this thing. So yeah, I could get cutesy with you and do some kind of celebrity thing, but I'm just going to ask you straight up: who's better, Jack, Jerry Rice or Randy Moss?
Listen, I'm going to comment over career. Jerry Rice, on career achievement and ranking, what he accomplished is better than Randy Moss. He played 21 years to Moss's 14. Peak value only. At their very same, Randy Moss, when the two of them are at their absolute best, Jerry Rice had the better career, so you'd have to rate them ahead of Randy Moss.
Well, one question for you to prove my point. If it was 3rd and 10 or 4th and 10 at the 10-yard line of goal line, who are you going to throw the ball to, Randy Moss or Jerry Rice?
Oh, if you only need 10 yards, I like Jerry Rice running the pad. If I'm at midfield and I need a long throw, I want Randy Moss.
Okay, Jack. Okay, Jack. So that's the end for our show, folks. Thanks for tuning in to our debate show. Again, folks, tomorrow, the big Super Bowl show on YouTube channel, Northeast Streaming Sports, and we'll be streaming live to the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook page. Join us, and we'll have a great show for you tomorrow, folks. A lot of guests, former players, Super Bowl players, all kinds of people, Jack. We're going to
8 a.m. to 11 a.m. If they can't make it at 8 Mac, they could join us at any time.
Oh, definitely. So there you go. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us today. Have a great day. Have a great Saturday night, and we'll see you.